On today's episode of You Asked, the Editor's Cut, we're going to set aside the fact that it is currently a shopping blitz. No Black Friday talk, no Cyber Monday talk. Instead, let's have a little fun and wax nostalgic. What was the most profound tech-related gift that you ever got for the holidays? Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and this is You Asked, the Editor's Cut edition. Typically, this is a show where I answer questions you asked in hopes that I can help you and others with similar tech questions. And as always, if you want to send a question in, please do it to youasked@digitaltrends.com, and we'll see if your question gets picked to be answered on the show. Today, however, as you can see, is a slightly different version of the show that we like to call the Editor's Cut, in which we invite in some other editors from Digital Trends to talk about trending topics. This week is a very special edition, one that I'm excited about because I have very warm and fond memories of a couple of different gifts I got for the holidays that had a profound impact on me and my journey through tech and also my career. And so we're going to talk about that today. And to talk about that, our motley crew of editors consists today of Giovanni Colantonio, who is the gaming senior editor of Overgaming. Is that right? Did I get that right, Gio?
Senior gaming editor, yeah.
We also have Jacob Roach, who is lead reporter over PC hardware. Welcome to the show. I think this is your first appearance, right, Jake?
Yep, first time.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And last but certainly not least, brand new to Digital Trends is John Higgins, who is the AV section editor at Digital Trends now, my partner in crime, and possibly the only one who can challenge my title as lead knit nerd. John, welcome to the company and also welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I am very excited to be both at DT and on my first episode of You Asked.
And I, for one, love having you. I know everybody else does as well. So like I said, guys, I have a lot of really fond memories of having received some very specific tech-related gifts over the holidays. They had a profound effect on me, and I suspected that I was not the only one. So I sent the question out to all of you guys, and hopefully you did some preparation. Hopefully you have some warm memories to share. If you have, any negativity around this, just keep it to yourself, please. We're trying to keep this happy and positive. Now, when the show publishes, we'll have just gotten through Black Friday, and we're going to be staring down Cyber Monday. I want to take a step away from all of that shopping madness and actually look forward a little bit to when we get the gifts, we give the gifts, and to do that, I think let's see, who do I want to start with? I'm going to start with Gio today. Gio, tell us about the most profound tech gift that you ever got for the holidays.
Oh my gosh, I would love to, because it's a memory that I cherish very deeply. So when I was a kid, as tends to happen when you're a gaming kid, I think you have your sort of like random allegiances, right? Where you're kind of like a Nintendo kid or a Sony kid or something like that. Some people continue that into way older than they should. But for me, when I was a kid, I at some point was kind of like a firm Nintendo kid, which was funny because I never actually owned a Nintendo system as a kid. I had like the Game Boy, so I had some of the handhelds, but I never had an NES. I never had a Super Nintendo, and I certainly never had a Nintendo 64. But I played them so much at friends' houses, and I played them so much at school and family houses and things like that, that I just really, really loved Nintendo at that point in my life when I was a teenager. And so one year, there was a hot new Nintendo console coming out called the old Nintendo GameCube. Nintendo's strange little cube console that had a lovely indigo color to it and looked like nothing else on the gaming market. It didn't just look like a box. Well, I guess it looked exactly like a box, but you know what I mean. Not the typical kind of black box that you would get from like the PS2 and the Xbox of the era. And for me, I really, really deeply for that Christmas wanted it. And I think I really wanted it because I finally wanted to actually own a console that felt like mine. Up to that point in my life, it had been a lot of hand-me-downs. I had my my mother's Atari 2600. I kind of shared a PS1 with my brother and like a Sega Genesis with my brother, but I didn't have something that was mine. And this felt like a console that could be my first real one. So I was very, very insistent about getting this console growing up, during that holiday season. And my family took that as a good opportunity to tease me about it quite a bit, of course, in the lead up to Christmas. So it became sort of like a console war in my house, where my dad kept kind of like talking about the Xbox and how like actually the Xbox is great, and not the Nintendo GameCube. And of course, because I was a kid, who cared about this stuff, I was argumentative about that. Um, but Christmas Day comes, and I start to get hints before actual Christmas that perhaps I did get a GameCube, because a family member gave me a GameCube memory card on Christmas Eve, and I was like, "Well, that's likely a good sign." Uh,
Did you see your
but
parents' face, like, when you got that game like, that memory card? Did you see just,
I
like,
think
the life drain out of them at that moment?
I think I like turned and kind of like looked at them slyly, and they were just kind of like, yeah, like at that point it was obvious. But they really wanted their best, tried their best to make the build up to that miserable. So I remember on Christmas morning, I'm opening presents, and there was a big box, um, and I open it up, like, ooh, what is this? And my father had actually like, I don't know where he got it. He must have like gone to a GameStop at the time and like stolen it off a marquee or something, but he got like a cardboard Xbox logo and like put it on top of a box. So when I opened it from the middle, there was the big Xbox logo, and I was like, a kid, so I was kind of like huffy about it. But sure enough, open all the gifts that day, and open everything, and I'm like, all right, that's everything. And then, of course, one more present, the one more thing in the tradition of gaming presentations, like E3, and they bring out a box, and sure enough, it is the Nintendo GameCube, and I was just thrilled about it. And like I said, it felt like something that was mine. It felt like my first real introduction to gaming. It felt like my first console that was just for me and not just like a toy that I was given to kind of keep me occupied. And I remember just spending Christmas Day playing the heck out of that thing. I played so much Super Smash Brothers Melee because it was out at that point, I think, by December. I was playing the original Pikmin, and like it was the kind of thing where it was like, hey, we have to have Christmas dinner. And I was like, can I just not? Can I just not and sit here and do this instead? And I mean, that's one of those foundational memories that, as hokey as it is, wouldn't be here today talking to you if it wasn't for it. That's the console that really sparked my love of video games, my interest in it. And some of my favorite games of all time are on that system, including my favorite game of all time, which is Metroid Prime for the Nintendo GameCube. So it really means a lot to me. And it meant a lot that my parents kind of took that request seriously, and that it felt like it was a thing that I actually wanted and would get something out of. And I have a career to show for it, so I think it paid off. So hopefully that's a lesson to any parents out there who are like, am I really going to get my kid like a PlayStation this Christmas? Really? Is that a waste of money? It in the long run could have an effect. They could get a job if they're really committed to it. Who knows?
Setting realistic expectations for parents everywhere. First of all, what a dad move. I mean,
I
that's
know.
classic dad, Christmas holiday gift giving move. And much respect to that. But I want to know more about why you wanted the GameCube more than the Xbox. I mean, I understand just kind of, forming an infatuation with something, but did you have like concrete reasons back then, or was it just like the kid wants what the kid wants and that's what it was?
Yeah, I mean, part of it had been that I was aware of stuff like Zelda and Mario, which were series that I never really got to mess with in the Nintendo 64 era. I had friends who were playing the Nintendo 64 when it came out who like sung the praises of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and I always felt like I was missing out on those moments because I knew that like at that time Nintendo was making the best games, for people who loved them. Xbox was untested at the time, and also the lineup was a little geared towards older audiences, right? It was like shooters and racing games, right, at the time, and games that I probably would have loved at the time too. But Nintendo stuff felt a little more where I was at that period. And the PlayStation 2, I'm not sure, like, because what a fantastic system in retrospect, like one of the greatest of all time. And I had a PlayStation 1, but when I had a PlayStation 1, it was like I was too young for it. So the games I had for it were like garbage, right? It was like the Grinch for PlayStation 1, right? Like I wasn't playing Final Fantasy 7. So I think at that point I just didn't have it in my head that that was like a serious system, right? I thought of it as the like that's the place where I play all the licensed games based off the cartoons. And for some reason at the time, I just think that the GameCube felt like the console to have, and there was so much that was announced for it. I was reading gaming magazines at the time, so I knew it was coming out for it, and I was like, oh my god, Wave Race 64 and Rogue Squadron and all these games that are going to be there in its first year, Luigi's Mansion. And yeah, I don't know, it's just something about that resonated with me, and I still love Nintendo games a lot to this day. I love their design philosophy, which I think really came into its own in the GameCube era. So yeah, I don't know, it just, yeah, I knew at the time.
That's amazing. My understanding is that you enjoy Nintendo games a bit more than you enjoy certain Sega games. If that's accurate. We might want to not get too deep into that. I do have to say though, as we transition to John, you're next. Get yourself prepared. But I don't know if this is still a thing, but for a while there, there was actually one particular version of the PlayStation 1 that audiophiles started clamoring over for some weird reason, because it had a really great DAC in it, and it sounded great for stereo audio. And people started scooping them up, and the price of those on eBay actually went up. I don't know if it's still a thing, but yeah, what a weird. I had to throw that in because we have a lot of AV viewers on this particular show. And so, yeah, anybody who remembers that whole weird thing with the PlayStation 1 as a CD player, drop a comment right now and let me know what you know about that, and if you ever actually did that. It's such a weird random thing. But speaking of AV, I want to go to John next, and find out what it was that you thought of when I kind of pitched this idea to you, John.
Well, you have a very great unintentional segue that you just did, because mine is about a Sony CD player, specifically the Sony Discman,
Yeah.
from 1995. I want to say, I think it was the D145, D135, something along those lines. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments. But it was when it was called a Discman. I think they eventually changed the name to a CD Walkman to try and fit in with the 80s tape Walkman, which I also had. But the CD one was a far more monumental gift for me, I guess I would say. It You can imagine, while it was portable, it was still a hefty size. It's got to fit a CD in it. And I would bring it with me everywhere. I had I grew up in the Northeast, so winters would get cold, and I had a trench coat that I would wear that had big enough pockets where I could maybe not easily slide it in, but I could make sure that it would fit in those pockets. And quite often adjust the volume.
Were you a goth kid wearing a trench coat with a Discman in it?
No, no. I was.
You just had that kind of fashion sense.
Oh, fashion sense is a very strong term that I would not say I
How
had
old were
at
you
all.
though, John? This is actually relevant. How old were you when you got that?
High school. So that would have been 16, I want to say.
So I gotta ask then,
95. Yeah.
because I share the love of the Discman. I also eventually ended up getting one, although I was a little bit older when I finally got one. Did you have a cassette adapter for it, and did you
For
use
the
it
car?
or try to use it in your car?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The cassette.
How
It
bad
looked
did
like
that
a
sucker
plastic
skip?
little cassette with the ribbon coming
You
off
can
the
still
end
get
that
one.
you'd stick it in. I'm sure you can. I'm sure they
Yeah.
work just as poorly as they did then.
Yeah, and they also come with Bluetooth apparently now. You can just skip the headphone cable. But all right, how bad did it skip though? Like later with the Discman, they started developing this oversampling technique, which basically was like, well, this is a very bad explanation of it, but it would sample the audio off the disc many times, so that if there was a skip, it tried to prevent the actual audio skip from happening, because it had basically banked some information and would reacquire, its place on the disc. And then hopefully you didn't notice it skipping. But in the early days, they didn't have any of that. And so, like, you would breathe on it wrong and it would skip. And if you tried to play one in the car, at least the way I remember it, it was kind of a nightmare. But
Yeah.
like, but some people would like create suspension systems for their Discman in their car. Did you do any of that crazy stuff with it?
I was not that handy, and it was also my mother's car that it would have been. So any sort of, I mean, she wouldn't let me deliver pizzas in it, let alone add any sort of mechanics to the cabin. I think that's EVP or something, vibration protection, or that you could switch on. From what I remember, this Discman did have that. It was one of the first that had it, and uh, it it would marginally work, um, but it would also affect the sound quality because it's doing that sampling that you're talking about. So you're not getting as good quality as you would get from the CD without it on. And walking around Harvard Square for me in Cambridge, Mass. It would skip. I would say regularly, um, but I was listening to a CD while I was walking around. It was heaven, absolutely. Like my life has always been music. I'm been a musician since I was 5. I have done audio editing and such throughout my career, and just having music around is so important. Um, and being able to listen to them.
Did it come with headphones or did you like swap them out or?
I can't remember if it came. So the ones that I remember using were I don't remember the model number, but they were Sony headphones. They were sort of oblong that would fit on your ears, and part of it would part of the um, stems would come around your ears to hold them in place in theory. But I don't remember. They had uncomfortable foam on them, which seemed to be the trend at the time, but not like the ones that came with that yellow Walkman from the late '80s. They were, they didn't sound great, but again, I was walking along and skipping my tracks, so I was just happy to be listening to whatever I was at the time.
How long did you hold on to that thing?
Through college, I want to say. So into
And then
around
what was next?
2000.
Was it like a MP3 player or what came after that?
Um, Immediately after that would have been, oh, you know what? I actually, for a little bit, uh, I actually went back to the tape deck, um, because of the fact that I was making some mixtape. I was going back to making mixtapes, which I found to be a more, I don't know, satisfying experience to do on a cassette deck as opposed to a CD, which I also did. Um, and then got into early, a few years after that, would get into early MP3 players with like the iPod and stuff like that.
The iPod was kind of a separate thing. Like there were really crappy. Like, did you ever own a Zune or did you go straight to the Apple like portable music player
I
experience?
basically went to the Apple experience. I used the Zunes, but I never owned one.
Nor did I. Nor did I. And I also feel like this is an important moment to remind everybody that the Pono player existed. It was a Toblerone shaped, high fidelity portable music player that I almost said Neil Diamond came up with it. No, that was Neil Young, different Neil,
Very
a
different.
very different Neil. Yeah, that's a different show though. Talking about all the portable digital music players. Anyway, thank you, John, for sharing that story. I'm reminded of all the Discmans that I went through. I went through like 2 or 3 of them, but none was better than the first one that I got. Like that, yeah, that one is lodged in my memory as well. Uh, Jacob, sir,
Yes.
please tell me that you're going to talk about your very first ever synthesizer, the Yamaha DX100.
No, I'm not, unfortunately. I am going to talk about my first PC that I built, which wasn't,
Shocker.
I know. Which wasn't solely restricted to the holidays, but it was finished during the holidays. So I must have been 13, 14 throughout that year. And every single cent that I got, I committed to buying some sort of PC part. So come Christmas time, I think I only needed like a power supply, some memory, and some storage, or something like that. Some of the more easy to fit in components. I had all the main stuff already figured out. So I was gone with my family, and we were visiting my grandparents that lived in this little apartment down in Florida, and go visit. I kind of knew that I was getting these, a few additional parts. I think I was getting, some from my parents and some from my grandparents. And I get the stuff, put all my things together, and immediately run away while everyone's, finishing up. Um, so they had kind of a hallway in their apartment complex, this kind of like back hallway between different units that you'd walk back and throw your trash down to the trash bin or something like that. It wasn't like a main hallway that most people would walk down. So I went out there because I was terrified that I was going to break something by getting charged with static and shocking it. I set up a card table, and I spent the next like four 4.5 hours building this PC, and being absolutely petrified that I would break something. Thankfully, I didn't break anything. Um, I got back out, and my processor, I booted it up, I installed Windows. My processor was overheating, so I had to go reconfigure a bunch of stuff. But after a couple of days of trial and error, it eventually worked. Um, and we were there through New Year's, so kind of from Christmas to New Year's, I was installing all sorts of stuff on there. A lot of stuff that like my dad turned me on to when I was younger, Unreal and Quake, Delta Force, all those types of games I was installing on there and playing. But the real big one was Half-Life 2, and specifically the Orange Box. That was what got me interested in PC gaming in the first place. Is I wanted to play all of these amazing Valve games, the kind of way they were intended to be played on PC, and that's what started the whole kind of obsession with building my own. And I got the Orange Box, I got the games installed, and I will never forget on New Year's Eve, my family, they had put out a bunch of, a party tray from Walmart, and some various things that we were all just kind of eating on, and everyone was enjoying themselves. My whole family's outside, standing on a patio, watching fireworks. I'm sitting inside at my grandparents' kitchen table with the tablecloth pushed back, playing Half-Life 2 on New Year's Eve. And my mom's coming in and is like, yeah, come outside. I'm like, nope, can't be bothered. And yeah, I wouldn't have had it any other way.
And you've never gone outside ever since.
That's right. Actually, deep Jacob lore, have never touched grass since that point.
I touch grass. Dude, I have so many questions. So first of all, like I may have misunderstood your characterization of like the back hallway at the apartment. Were you outdoor PC building, or was it like an indoor hallway that connected the units or whatever?
It was indoor. So it was at like the end of the hallway that you'd walk to get to the different units, and it like connected both sides. It was a place where people dumped their trash. It was like fluorescent office lighting,
So you were
rubbery feeling
ostracizing
floors.
yourself before others could do it for you, like as a PC
Yeah.
builder. That is
Yeah.
commitment and also foreshadowing, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
That's hardcore. Okay, the other question I have is the way you told the story, it kind of sounded like you waited until you got the last component for the PC build before you started building anything. But was that actually the case? Or did you kind of like build and build and build and build and like that you finally got those last couple of pieces and put them in and then got to turn the thing on and like load the OS and all that stuff? How did that go?
No, I didn't. I waited until the last minute to put everything together. I didn't put everything on initially. I mean, but what are you going to do if you know put a processor and a motherboard and you look at it and be like, wow, I did it. Okay. Um, and part of it was that I knew I was traveling with my family to go visit my grandparents, so I didn't want to put anything together and then like worry about breaking it or anything like that. I kept everything in the box, kind of stored away.
How did your parents feel that like about you not just having like your overnight night bag, you know, filled with PJs or whatever, but you also had what did you carry all that stuff in? Like, and were they cool with you having like a separate piece of luggage just for your PC build project?
Yes, so we drove, so we had all the room in the world. Yeah, drove down in a minivan with the 2 back seats, taken out, I think. I don't think you could fold them down. So plenty of room back there to put all that stuff in. So, yeah, they were fine with it.
I had it in my head that it was a wood paneled station wagon, like, you know,
No.
a country squire or something like that. But minivan works. Minivan still works for that story.
Yeah, I think it was a
It,
Plymouth.
yes, yes. But did it have the fake wood paneling on the side, like you were gonna barbecue off the side of your minivan?
You know, I ours didn't. I think they did have a Plymouth with, like, a very thin piece of wood paneling for a time, though.
Those were the best Plymouths. Rest in peace, Plymouth. Dude, I love that story and how ultimately it ended up just being about Half-Life 2. And I remember the orange box for some reason. You know what I mean? Like that and that's the thing for me. Whenever I hear other people tell their stories about you know, tech memories, tech related memories, it's always something specific like that. With John, when he started talking about the Discman, I could see the Sony sticker with all like the orange dots. It was like this weird pattern with orange dots on it. And for you, I could see the orange. There's an orange theme going on here. Gio, why didn't you have any orange stuff in your story? What?
There was an orange GameCube. That
There
was
you
one of the color
go.
variations of it. Not the one I had, but we can say that it was, if it'll help. If it'll help you with your synesthesia moment that you're having here.
Yeah, no, it's tying the whole room together. Real nice there. It's like dude's rug. It's the orange theme. Um, Sweet. Well, I kind of feel weird telling my story because it seems so self-serving, but also it would be weird if I didn't. So I'll just go ahead. I've been having a tough time deciding between two. Um, but I'll give an honorable mention for the other one because the other one was not a gift for me. It was a family gift that I ended up kind of taking over. But the gift for me, it was also a Sony product, but it was a Sony boombox. So I am without a doubt the oldest person in this room by a fair margin, I believe. And for me, I think I was 12 years old and I got my first boombox, and it was not like I think a lot of people think of boomboxes or jam boxes as they were called back then in the South anyway. Like they think of the big silver, like, you know, gigantic things that, you know, people would take out to the street and then they'd throw a piece of cardboard down on the ground and everybody would be breakdancing. I did not have one that big. I had a smaller black Sony boombox. I don't even know how big the speaker, like the actual drivers inside were, but I loved that thing. AM, FM, single cassette boombox. It would run off D batteries, or you know, you could plug it into the wall. But the thing, it also had tone controls and a balance control, so treble, bass, and balance up on the top. And it had a built-in microphone. And I had already had a bunch of fun with my dad's old school Walkman that had like a stereo with like a microphone grill on it, like think SM58, you know, professional microphone. It had a little bump out with stereo mics, and I messed around with that, pretending to be a radio DJ for way too long, foreshadowing to my illustrious podcast career, of course. But the built-in mic on the boombox was I definitely messed around with that. But what I really did was I was kind of creating my own mixtapes, but off of radio broadcasts. So I would sit and wait for that song to come on. And I would press record and then I'd hit the pause button. And then I would wait until that song came on. And the trick was, well, hopefully the DJ didn't talk over the first like 5 seconds or 7 seconds of the song, talking about this is dedicated to Mary from Joe. That's a Christmas reference. Hopefully they just shut up and the song played and I could unpause it and get a beginning of it clean and then pause it right at the very end to get a clean take of the song, because it was free music. You could record it. You just got it off the radio. And that's how I kind of started my early editing days. Later, I would end up with a dual cassette tech and I would do dubs and, transfer stuff off of other tapes onto a main tape. But yeah, that boombox, it was a huge, huge deal for me. I love that thing. And it sounded okay, but it was really just like the portability of the music. I could take it anywhere I wanted to. Never did get into breakdancing. That just wasn't my thing. I know from looking at me, obviously you'd think breakdancer, but surprisingly enough, no, I never really got into it.
So what you're saying is that piracy is what got you into this.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that you.
Hey man, we were all doing it back then.
Oh yeah,
I did the same thing.
Hey, it doesn't make it okay. All
Yeah.
right.
I never understood people who got on. I mean, Napster was just a democratized version of piracy. It just put us all together. We were all doing it but actually, it's funny you bring that up, because the other thing that had a huge impact on me was the VCR. Like, we had grown up, we actually rented VCRs from the video store for a while because we didn't own one. We borrowed one from our neighbor at one point. And actually, he had a Betamax. He had a beta player, and we borrowed his beta every once in a while. Once the neighbor lent us his beta player, it already had a tape in it. It was labeled one thing, but it had different kinds of content on it that kids should not see. So that was an interesting moment for me. But when we got our own VCR, I mean, that was it. And same thing. I started recording movies off of cable with the VCR, and there were always commercials. And so I got really good at editing on the VCR. So you'd rewind it and then you'd hit slow motion and wait until it faded to black. And right before it popped into the commercial, you pause, hit record again. And then it was just about unpausing it right as the movie came back on. And then you could have like a completely commercial free movie off the VCR. So an extension on what I was doing with the boombox, but on the actual VCR. And then later I would record laser discs onto VCR tape, because you could rent laser discs and they look so much better than the videotapes that you could get at the store. But yeah, that, I feel like the boombox and then by extension the VCR are really what got me into electronics, and I was just hooked from then on out. And everything is a progression from that point. Man, I'm so thankful that my parents, right, and it sounds like everybody has a similar story here. Parents recognized what the kid was passionate about, and they fed that passion, even though it may have seemed like it was just pure funsies, right? It's just a luxury gift, work really hard, save the money, buy the kid the gift and give them something fancy for the holidays. But I think every single one of us is basically saying that that kind of set the tone for the rest of our lives. Everything kind of built on from there. And so I would like to say thanks to my parents, thanks to each one of you's parents, and thanks to parents everywhere who recognize that sometimes it's not just a matter of a kid wanting a fancy thing because all his friends have it, but there's something else going on. And when you see that passion there, feed it, because you never know where it's going to go. Works that way for music too. I know John, same. Also, actually, isn't everybody in this room like a musician of some sort? If you're not,
Yep.
I know Gio, I know you do stuff. Jacob, did you ever get into music?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I played in a bunch of bands when I was younger. I did a little bit of recording and editing. I'm pretty familiar with like Pro Tools and stuff. Yeah.
Dude, see, I knew there is something about like passion for electronics and passion for music, and not just listening to it, but also like making it, that is tied together. I know so many other tech journalists who are also musicians. Like it's just there's a connection there that I don't know if that's been adequately explored. So we may have to look into that in a future episode. But to close things out, I just want to first of all say thanks for sharing a personal story and getting it out there. And I would love it if you out there in the audience watching right now have a similar story. Please leave it in the comments, because I love reading everybody else's stories about this, and I'm sure that the audience is going to want to hear about your story as well. So please share that down in the comments. If you like this episode, you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up button, smash it with a like, whatever the kids are saying these days. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. We do this particular version of You Asked once a month. I'll see you on the next one, as will these fellas. And until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like.